Hello and welcome to my channel. I am ZodiacBandit, and today we are going to be recapping episode 30. We've made it to the 30 milestone, which is great, of Critical Role Campaign 3. So let's get right into it. We start with the party on their crawlers driving through the Hellcatch Valley. They're coming up to a cliff's edge as they see a 20-foot wide bridge made out of metal, I believe. The bridge will take them from this side of the ravine to the other side of the ravine. While on the bridge, Birdie shows Fern that there's foliage growing in the bottom of this ravine as life finds a way. On the bridge, they come across another crawler who goes past them toward Bassaris, and they have a mark of a high-ranking member of the Fist of the Ruiner on them. FCG points that out. As they get close to the end of the bridge, Orm sees a person in the distance and then turns around to see what looks to be the end of a flare going off behind them. A bunch of dirt and earth is then thrust out of the ground, and a metal net trap is now visible. They use the bridge to ramp and go over the trap, and then on the other side of this trap, a massive crawler with 3 legs shows itself with a half-giant driving it, and there's a ton of guns on this thing. And more people pop up surrounding the party as Ashton pulls off to the left side. A voice comes out from the crawler that says halt or die, which is very limited options, as Fern points out. A figure stands up on the crawler, about middle-aged man with a face cover. He says they are marked and are to leave their stuff on a rock and then cross back over the bridge. The party say that they're with the Paragon's call, but that is just met with laughs. Imogen steps off of the backpack and says, "This is all I have," and then proceeds to put it on right near the crawler. The figure yells that now they know the ire of Mari Chris. Great name. Doesn't get made fun of at all during this session. Imogen sets the bag down, which contains the bomb they bought in Bassaris, and she uses Mage Hand to set it off. The bomb goes off and messes up the front leg of this tripod crawler, and this is where combat starts. And I only go over things that I find to be kind of relevant during combat, so I'm going to jump around just a little bit, and I'm going to start with the first turn, which is Orm jumps up to the top of the crawler with the half-giant, who swings his mounted gun toward Orm, hitting Orm with it, and then proceeds to shoot Laudna, Imogen, and FCG, but only hits Laudna, who then Hellish Rebukes back, doing more damage than the bullet did, which was interesting. Imogen see? Everyone does it. Laudna, Imogen, mix the names up. Imogen uses Lightning Bolt, which absolutely messes up the gun that the half-giant was using, but it happens to send more bullets toward the ground, hitting both party members and gang members during this combat, and it also blows up the barrel, and I believe the lightning bolt kills one of the gang members on the crawler itself. After this, Mari Chris takes his turn and shoots at the party, but then calls for a retreat. As they run, one of the men on the crawler blasts FCG, Imogen, and Birdie with an acid magic attack. I wasn't quite sure, I didn't catch the name. KOing both Imogen and FCG. FCG is healed. Then they heal Hundir, who was also hurt during the rapid fire of bullets after the gun went off. Imogen is also picked up and pulls off one of the guys from the crawler. Birdie casts Sleep, but goes down again due to acid. By the way, both Imogen and FCG both go down again after the acid hits them for a second time. Birdie, out cold, accidentally drives over the member that fell off the crawler. Laudna then casts Darkness onto the crawler itself, and the darkness seems to move with the crawler, which I didn't know that's how that worked. I don't think it is, but you know what? Rule of cool is way better than the rules of the book. And I happen to agree with that statement. So if anyone was really bothered by that, just remember the rule of cool is there for a reason, because it should supersede everything. This will eventually lead to the crawler itself falling into the ravine as they couldn't see the ledge due to the darkness, which is hilarious. After that, they all get up, dust themselves off, and head to the hideout, which is at the base of another ravine after Birdie pulls them quite close to the edge yet again, but takes them down a thin path, which leads them to a cave which has a shack inside. The shack has lots of plants and knickknacks all over the walls, which, remind the rest of the party of Fern, who has her own little knickknack stealing issue. Seems she has it from her family, which I'm pretty sure we already knew. It also has two back doors, one leading to rooms that people sleep in, and the other leading to the lab. They also see that there are rocks that are what's helping the plants grow in here, and according to the party, they all recognize these rocks. I'm spacing on these rocks. I believe it's the ones that Ira used to bring things to life. Maybe. I'm not too sure. Please, someone in the comments, let me know for sure where these rocks are from. Chetney stays outside of the lab hallway to help cover up the tracks with Birdie. The rest of them go down, but before they do, Imogen tells Chetney not to touch the stones because they know what happens when they do. And then before says, well, you're fast enough, maybe just touch it, just don't grab them or take them. They make their way through the hallway, down into the lab, and inside the lab is a 30-foot tall telescope. Near this telescope is a elfman who sees the party and tells them to stop and is confused about who they are before he sees Fern and realizes who she is. Fern's dad is an elf, which is interesting and very much noted. He runs to her and hugs her. He is a little weirded out by the age, which we'll get to in a minute. She asks about the telescope, and they look up and see Ira hanging onto the telescope, who says, "Hello, friends," in his very creepy voice, and then climbs down. Fern introduces the party to Ollie, her father, and the party just keep their eyes on the Nightmare King, also known as Ira. Fern then gives Ollie the lens from Maury and is almost immediately grabbed and taken by the Nightmare King. He apologizes for how they last met and explains that he took kidnapped kids, as it was a part of his job, not necessarily his idea. He didn't really care or didn't seem to mind doing it, but it wasn't necessarily something he wanted to do. Ira calls the telescope the Veil Scatter Scope, and it apparently can scry on places and supersedes blocking magic and blocking items, so they could creep on Caleb all they wanted to with this thing, and anybody else who has one of those scrying blocking things. Very interesting. He asks who is curious among the group, and Laudna steps forward, and using this scope, he shows her ley lines and a nexus point where the ley lines are, and then shows her Ruidus. According to Matt, while he's doing all this, he's messing with a bunch of dials, and there's a light show going on within the room itself, with all these lights humming and eventually creating some sort of Aurora Borealis-like effect in the room. Laudna rolls poorly and doesn't see much more than the clouds on the moon. And apparently, according to Matt, she's getting kind of drowsy and dizzy from this. Ira pulls it from her face. He then jumps onto the scope and begins work to adding the weave lens to the scope. Orm tries to see if he can, see if the crown is visible. Ashton asks if there's anything else in the room, and Matt describes it as a messy shop-like room, much like Imahara Joe's shop, which is covered in tables with a bunch of shit all over the place. Fern asks Ollie what they're trying to do, and he says that they're trying to see what is not letting them see further into Ruidus, which was kind of a weird way to put it. At this point, Hundir walks in. Ollie explains that Hundir has been very helpful to him and Birdie, who aren't from Alexandria, and he's helped them with talking to others and sharing information with other people so that they can all collectively learn about Ruidus. Ollie also says he has the ability to see into the future, a tiny bit, or to see danger, which I believe he said was squidding. I didn't quite. It was squidding or squitching or something. It was a weird word that I didn't quite catch. It's one of those things where I wish Matt would repeat himself a few times. He saw he saw the destruction of the Feywild, and he saw what he thought at the time was Birdie in the middle of it. But looking at Fern now, doesn't quite think that it was Birdie. According to him, then that's when a Unseelie member approached him and told him to forget everything they kind of knew and saw. But then they kind of went into the Unseelie court, saw that there were Alexandrian military working with them, and they were trying to build something, so they stole the crown and ran. They soon realized that this made them a target now, as whatever they stole was very important to what they were working on. This is what prompted them to drop Fern off with Maury, who is called the Fate Stitch by Ollie, and no one would go there to go get Fern because she's extremely dangerous. The party explained what they know about Odahan, and Imogen says she thinks her dreams might take place on the moon. Fern also shows off her markings. Hundir says that she might be a special Ruidus born, and that there are others who are seemingly all going to Eos. Orm asks about the Alexandrians that they saw with the Unseelie court. Ollie obviously explains Odahan a little bit, like that he saw Odahan, and then he explains that there was a elven man with Odahan who had grayish blue clothes on and silvery long hair. So, very interesting description. Orm asks about the age of this elf, but because elves don't age normally, it's hard to tell. But according to Ollie, there seems to be some sort of history behind him. Ollie then goes back to explaining what they're trying to do with this telescope, which is find out what Ruidus is and stop whatever the event is coming. So a very basic idea of what they're trying to do, and they're not quite sure how to go about it yet by the seams of things. Orm asks Ollie for his opinion on Ira, and Ollie says that he doesn't fully trust him, or he doesn't fully like him, but he's kind of a unnecessary guy to be around, and he's learned quite a lot from Ira about all of these things. Ira explains that he left the Fey realm because he was bored of the peaceful world and a world that seemingly forgot him. And when the Callaways went to him, he had something new to do and some sort of new intellectual curiosity to work towards. The party don't really believe him. At this point, Chetney shows up without Birdie. Very concerning, Chetney. What did you do? Ira then says that they don't have to trust him. They just have to let him work, because that's more important to him than their trust. Ashton wants to have a drink with Ira, but Laudna gets mad at him because she wanted to have one with Ira first. But it seems that they come to an agreement to go on another sort of double date-like thing that they did with Pretty. Interesting. Chet asks about the crown, to which Ollie says it's hard to miss once you see it. It's very crystal-y-like and magical-like, and it also gave him magic, improved dark vision, and it gave him a better connection to and understanding the sky and his position. Orm then asks how Ollie and Birdie met. He says that he was a traveler and he liked to trick people using his future-seeing abilities. And when he was in a town, he met a girl, he describes Birdie, that took him for all of his money and all of his stuff, and he fell in love. And he asked her to come with him, and she said no. She asked him to go with her. He said yes. Boy meets girl. Girl meets boy. They fall in love. They go off together. Very, very basic stuff. But they then ask a little bit more about Maury, who is, the name Maury doesn't seem to track with everybody. Ira calls her Morrigan at some points, which is kind of a famous, I don't want to say what god or pantheon it's from, but there's like a famous character within certain mythologies, pantheons, with that same name, so I wonder if Matt's taking some sort of inspiration from that. And Ollie and Fern both confirm that she is 13 feet tall, which is intense, and is a chrome hag, was what I heard. And she also has no coven, which is very dangerous, especially in the Fae. At this point, Fern asks if she was a trade or a deal with Maury, to which Birdie and Ollie kind of look at each other and then look at Ira and realize that he's holding the weave lens, and kind of at the same time come to the same conclusion that she was a trade, which is kind of messed up in so many different ways, because they are both now seeing it like they're both in disbelief at this idea that they were convinced to leave their daughter behind with a hag for the weave lens, which is kind of messed up. At this point, Ira says he's done. Imogen goes to the scope and Ira goes to put her in it. And at this point, Chetney calls out Ollie for the gaps in his story, like how they knew the crown was important, and then Fern doubles down on this. And if Ollie and Birdie were helping build the same telescope for the Unseelie before they realized that this was a bad idea. But Ollie says that he had no idea what they were building, just knew that the crown was important. I don't necessarily think the party believes him. Imogen then looks into the telescope once more and sees a lattice field covering Ruidus. It seems to be like a cage. Then she goes on to say it seems to be some sort of god that can't get out. Ira says this is the first time he's ever heard of this. Fern insight checks him. We don't know what she learned. Ira looks at Ollie and Birdie and Hundir, who all seem scared by this potential god inside a cage theory. Imogen looks for an opening or a weak spot, but rolls very poorly and blames her glasses for missing it again. She also doesn't seem to be getting a headache or drowsiness like Laudna did. Laudna asks Ira why he doesn't look, and he says that they are the guests here and he wants them to look first, but if no one else will look, he'll look now. Orem then goes up to it, and with his insane perceptive skills, rolls a natural 20 for a 27, which is pretty good at level 5. He sees a glint as he's looking through the telescope, and then grabs Imogen and shows her. She makes Ira stop moving the telescope, and at this point on the telescope, the lights are humming extremely loudly as it's aimed into this glint, and the scope moves past the cage, moves past the storm, and they see a city. And this is where Matt ends the episode. What the fuck is going on? There is so many, like, it's crazy. At first my thought went to like, it's like another Somnovum. But there's no way. There's no way he's going to do another city-like thing going on. But there is another city. So I'm freaking out over the existence of another city within a weird place like this. Hopefully this city's not alive. And hopefully this city is completely empty except for one person. But I do want to point something else out. And that is EXU Calamity was, ley lines converging on a nexus point, and if you haven't seen EXU Calamity yet, click off because I'm about to give a little bit of a spoiler. So, last chance, click off for EXU Calamity. 3, 2, 1. Asmodeus was trying to bring out the prime deities. No, not the prime deities, the primordials. And this ley line thing was how he was going to do it with the Apogee Solstice and the ley lines and all the energy they collected over the years traveling before they came back to, before Avalier came back to the city to rest for a bit. That was how they were going to bring the primordials back. And I get the feeling there's a primordial inside Ruidus, which is awesome. And I'm getting this theory out now before it gets ruined before I can make the video again. Anyway, great episode. I really enjoyed a lot of the lore dumps, the mystery that's being, further expanded upon. And I like how Ira is slowly turning into at first he wasn't a necessary evil because we didn't know what his motives were. But as more gets revealed about Ruidus, it seems, with this brief little interaction with him, he is 100% a necessary evil to have around. And I'm really excited to see where that goes. I wonder if he's going to betray them at any point. That seems a little too obvious, but I also said that back in Campaign 1 with a certain Mind Flayer, so you never know. Anyway, that was episode 30 of Critical Role Campaign 3. I loved it. Can't wait for next week. So excited for everything else we get to learn about this. So yeah, see you guys then. Peace.